Here we go. Thanks to our patrons who funded this and voted for this, because that's how we do our patron dollars over here on GBGuns. The CZ75BD. Coming up next, you'll see absolute first thoughts through the gun. I even still have the sticker on it. I'll do full magazine plus one with the band state mag, since that's the one that I ordered. Don't worry, we have real mags too. Take it to the what's for dinner table to see what it eats, the spinner for sights and trigger control, then do some practical accuracy before giving you my concluding thoughts. Coming up next on GBGuns. I'd had enough comments about never doing band state compliant, or rather guns compliant with states not compliant with the Constitution, that when I ordered one of these, I decided to get the band state compliant model. And man, does CZ want to comply. They put nice big dents in the magazine, then this plastic floor plate even goes deep in there. There is no quick at-home conversion to turn this magazine back into a proper one. But I guess that makes it easier for them. Since it's a BD, I'm going to decock for the first shot. See how this feels. I pointed out in the tabletop some thoughts I had on how this may or may not feel to shoot. Not bad. Try decock again. See that flinch control there. Ammunition is Browning 115 grain that we got from Ammo Squared. That double action's nice. Pretty smooth. You know, I had voiced concerns about some of the sharp edges on the beaver tail. The sights not being super bright, at least to my fading eyes, but that went pretty well. Now we'll try a full magazine plus one with these limited mags, giving us 11 rounds. That magazine went in pretty easy for being limited, so nice of them on that. And starting off double action, how's it run? Oh, do have a malfunction. It is a feed failure. Did it go in? Little tiny slide. Yes, it did. There we go. Not my best shooting. I missed more than normal and shot a little slower than normal. Having trouble picking up these sights. They do have a little green kind of semi-phosphorescent thing in there, but my eye's just not picking it up. The good news is there's plenty of aftermarket, and since Grand Powers use a CZ75 front sight post, I have plenty of sight posts to change the front when I get home. Yeah, it's just kind of, my eye's just not catching it today. All right, well, before we do what's for dinner, I want to make sure those aftermarket mags I got are good. I'm sure they will be, but just in case, to be fair, we're going to run some rounds through them first. Quick mag check, just 3 rounds, because that's all we're concerned about, to make sure it's fair for what's for dinner. 2 of them are from Metgar, 1 of them is a Pro Mag, always a wild card. This one has a polymer base plate that is rather nice. Runs. This is a Metgar with an aluminum +2, I believe, base plate on it. I'm liking that single action. It's not 1911 short or crisp, but it's smooth. Now for the Pro Mag. All right, now we can fairly do what's for dinner. Thanks to our Ammo Squared supporters, patrons, and some manufacturers, it's what's for dinner time. As I roll past these, you'll notice that each of these 10 loads has a different projectile weight, the ogives in different location, we have different case materials, all kinds of variables, and yet they're all 9mm. Each of these is going to have a different recoil impulse, different feeding tendency. The goal of this test, Z will feed from slide lock, will cycle another round of the same type, and will lock open on empty with the energy generated. Testing more than that costs more ammo and time than we have, but if you'd like to try any of this stuff yourself, head on over to gbgunsdepot.com or see the pinned comment. The article there will link this stuff where we can find it. As always, we are back 7 yards away from some 1-inch circles. Those 1-inch circles are kind of a general aiming point. They're not exactly Precise, but it gives something to aim at and a general feel. First up is the Liberty Ammunition Civil Defense 50 grain plus P. I will be shooting all these in double action first shot because this is actually a pretty nice double action. And that shot very smoothly through this CZ. That was impressive. I'm a little taken back. Next we have some Federal lead-free 70 grain frangible for circle number 2. Also easy shooting, not as tightly grouping. Spear Gold Dot 115 grain. These are nickel plated. Nickel plating helps with corrosion resistance. Great for carry ammo that's going to ride next to a sweaty body. Also reduces friction going into and out of the chamber. Didn't want to mess up that group. That stuff smells a little bit like campfire, which is kind of nice. Now some Hornady American Gunner 115 grain. Notably softer shooting, did really well. Blazer aluminum 115 grain. We use aluminum case and or steel case if we can find it for the same reason you guys do. It costs less because it's cheaper to make. However, the expansion contraction rate is a little bit different than brass is. Additionally, the friction coefficient of the round stacked in the magazine and going into and out of the chamber can be a little different. So not all guns like it. Circle 5. Nice shooting. All right, now to top off some mags and we'll resume. Back at it with some Federal HST 124 grain. And you know, normally that stuff would have higher recoil, but just not feeling it here. Now some Foundation Series Federated Ordnance. I was unfamiliar with this brand, got it in from Ammo Squared. It's just some 124 grain ball, but figured give it a try. Man. PMC SFX 124 grain hollow point, circle 8. And I tell you, if I never have to manipulate the slide manually, I think I'd really like this gun. PPU Defense Line 147 grain hollow points. You could hear those were subsonic. They also printed very nicely. Speaking of subsonics, some Stolf from Ammo Inc. 165 grain. I did not mispronounce that. There's no A in the name. It feels like a cap gun with this. Wow, that's pretty smooth so far. Let's head over to the spinner for sights and trigger control. That's our Titan Great Outdoors spinner target. We're back about 13 yards away. It's a 6-inch spinner. Use this target for sights and trigger control because as I hit it, it starts moving. And if I want to keep hitting it, ideally to get it to spin over the top, I have to hit it on the, well, it's moving away from me. That requires timing a well-placed shot, hence sights and trigger control. Giving myself 8 rounds of that Browning 115 grain, starting on double action. Bam, 3-shot kill. I think that's probably the quickest yet. If you couldn't tell, that was easy. Really liking this trigger. Feels great. You know, I hear people talk about all the aftermarket mods they've made to CZ75s. I mean, heck, the gun's been out for 50 plus years. I see no reason to change the trigger, at least not in this one. The sights could use some change. The front sight at that angle, 20 minutes after I was shooting earlier and couldn't see it, I could see it very easily. The rear sight still not quite so clear to me. I just, once I knew where to hit, I kept hitting there, and that was pretty easy. But yeah, I would change the sights on this for sure. Everything else leave it as is so far. Let's head over back to 7 yards and do some practical accuracy. Target camera firing up, 7 yards back from a 1-inch square. Come on, target camera, you can zoom a little faster than that. This is how it got retired from being the main camera and became the target camera. Anyways, it's a 1-inch square, which for practical accuracy tends to be about the same size at this distance as a front sight post. I've got 5 rounds of that same Browning 115 grain that I've been using the whole time. Let's see how this goes. My eyes will serve me. It's also when I gather my concluding thoughts on the gun. Nice. Thank you, patrons, big time. Not only have the patrons enabled a fair manufacturer doesn't even know about it review of this gun, but the patrons also recommended this one. They wanted to see something classic. The vote came down to a 226 or a CZ75. CZ75 edged out, and then I put my spin on it and got the BD, which is the decocker model. Because if it's got a hammer, it should decock. That's my opinion. 1911s I know are an exception, but if you can do it, why not? Really smooth shooter. I do have a bit of a red spot in the web of my hand from that beaver tail biting, as I pointed out in the tabletop. Those edges are a little sharper. No, it's not that they're sharp, it's that the beaver tail is so narrow. If the beaver tail was wider, it'd be distributing that force over a larger surface area and it'd be comfier for my hand. That said, would I be afraid to spend a whole day on the range with this? No, not at all. Really nice shooter, very smooth shooter. I'm glad I didn't have to but once or twice grab the slide. I still remain critical of that, largely because the digits, the last joint of my finger, the last section, is longer than the slide is tall on these things. The accessible slide. The slide, of course, is the same height as any other slide. It's just that since it's riding inside the frame, you only have access to a little bit of it, and that makes it tough to grab. If you try to grab up front, then you end up with these 90-degree edges on the front of the dust cover. As you're sliding back, those jam into you. I could see, just because I've done things like that, being at a high-stress course and grabbing and missing and then going to grab up front and then ripping the ends of my fingers off. Yeah, you could say that's a me problem, and it would be. However, these are why I have criticisms like this, because I've attended courses and done stuff like that. But overall, this 50-year-old design, and this is, by the way, a real CZ produced in the Czech Republic. It's not the CZ USA stuff. Very nicely made. The weight, the action type, all made it very comfortable to shoot. The What's for Dinner tests were mostly jokably easy. Very comfortable gun. That single action rolling break that I described in the tabletop is not the crisp wall punch through, but ironically, since the stroke through trigger pull has come full circle back into trend in defensive shooting teaching, and that's what I've been trying again, works great with this trigger. If I was trying to prep at a wall and break there, I would struggle and maybe throw some shots, but you saw with that grouping and some of the What's for Dinner that is pretty darn good. And let's also not forget that for defensive shooting, groups like that don't really matter anyways. That's just how we feel good about ourselves at the range. But a spectacular gun, neat piece of history, and a gun that I think is still relevant today. It's maybe a bit heavy for carry, but for class use or home defense. Now, home defense, it doesn't have a light rail. There are other models, there are more modern versions. I wanted to go with as classic as I could get, since that's what the patrons wanted, and they paid for this. If you guys appreciate videos like this and being able to direct the YouTuber, consider joining our patron. When the funding reaches an amount that can buy a gun, then we hold votes and it goes from there. It's truly people's choice type thing. It's not some gambit I do to pay my mortgage or anything like that. I have a real job for that, folks. Thank you for watching. Thank you for 9 years of support, and we'll see you in the next video.